One of the more surprising questions people get in interviews, I think, is this one. What are variables? And they kind of struggle to answer. They might say it's it's a thing that holds some data in your program. Well, you can give them a much more comprehensive answer than that. You can say variables all start with the concept of memory. In a computer, we have random access memory, which is the high-speed memory allowing us to do calculations and store results. And the RAM might look something like this. Now, all the little squares in that block of RAM represent addresses in the memory. And each address can hold a bit of data. So if we have some variables such as x is equal to the string name or var y equals the integer 3, those become little blocks in memory. And a variable is actually an address in memory that the program can look up and retrieve the data from ultra quickly. That's why RAM exists, because it's quick. So that's what a variable is. It's a block of data stored in memory with an address attached to it. Now, it's not just that, and if you want extra points when you're explaining this at an interview, you can go on to say programming consists mainly of algorithms. So we put some data in and we get a change data out of the algorithm. And memory comes into there, or variables come into there, in that everything in your algorithm is a variable. So let's say you're making a recorder app, like a media recorder. A media recorder, once you create it, is itself a variable, and that is stored in memory. Same with the player. If you want to play the audio, that player will be stored in memory. So those are variables too. In fact, pretty much everything is a variable, including the results when you're doing operations to your variables. Those temporary results are stored in the RAM as well. Now, if you want extra bonus points from the people interviewing you, you can bring up this very, very important point, and I think you'll get the job if you say this to them. Let's say you have your variable media recorder, which is a big block of memory relative to, a string variable or an integer variable. That is going to cause issues. Why? Because if you keep a reference to it, i.e. it's referenced somewhere in your code, then the garbage collector never deletes it from the memory. So let's say you have an application where you record something, and then you go play it, and then you go back and you create a new media recorder to record something else. If you don't delete the old media recorder and you keep a reference to it somewhere, the software system that you're on, basically the operating system, will create another media recorder that occupies a second block of memory that size. And then if you do the same process over and over again, eventually you end up with dozens of blocks of memory that are all tied up and can't be removed by the garbage collector. That is called a memory leak, right? So you're leaking memory to whatever mistakes you're making. And over time, if your variables are large enough, you can actually finish all the memory in someone's computer. Everyone's done this. I've done this. Google Chrome does this, believe it or not. Their memory creeps up over time because there are memory leaks. Now, it might not be them. It might be the developers of the websites. So close a couple tabs, you should see the memory drop. But basically, these variables occupy memory. And what you have to do is unreference the variable, set it to null, so the garbage collector can come along, remove that reference from memory, and then that memory is free to use elsewhere, which keep your applications nice and memory lightweight. So that's variables in a nutshell, including that final point that will give you major brownie points if you're in an interview.